I'm making a YouTube video again. Been a while since I've done that. This one, however, is not going to be about Penne. It is going to be about British politics, because the funniest thing is going down in UK politics right now, and I feel like I want to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it. So, first of all, a bit of context. What is going on? So we're going to go back a bit to 2024 to talk a bit about, just to mention the UK's election in 2024. They had a general election. A new prime minister was elected, Keir Starmer. You might have heard of him. What happened though in that election is that despite Starmer's party, the Labour Party, who for Canadian viewers like myself, the Labour Party is essentially the UK's equivalent to the Canadian Liberal Party. There is differences, of course, but not that much. What's important to note is that in the most recent UK general election, the Labour Party won with 411 of the 650 seats in Parliament, which is a massive majority. But because first past the post is the way it is, and because the UK is a multi-party system, Labour won that 411 seats with only 33% of the popular vote. They won 63% of seats, 33% of votes. This meant that as Labour took office, they were not very popular despite having a massive majority. And so the Labour Party has always been on shaky standing with the British public. They've always been kind of unpopular since they took power. One, because most people didn't vote for them, and two, because they haven't done a very good job of governing with this massive majority in Parliament. And another reason why they've been unpopular is because people have been attracted to the alternative that Reform UK has been presenting to them. Reform UK is a far-right, anti-immigrant, anti-establishment party. They are pretty similar to the Rassemblement National in France, which is led by Marie Le Pen, and they're similar to, the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, the Republican Party in the United States, these far-right anti-establishment parties. And Reform are led by Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has been on the British political scene in a big way since at least 2016, when he was the leader of what was at the time the UK Independence Party, which was one of the major pro-Brexit, anti-European Union parties, and who really swayed a lot of popular perception prior to the British Brexit referendum, and were a big reason why Brexit succeeded. And, of course, a lot of the problems in the UK with their stagnant economy and stagnant wages and all this stuff can be in part attributed to the horrible decision to leave the United Kingdom in the first place. Or to leave the European Union, sorry, in the first place. And so my issue is kind of, the British public are trying to get out of this bad situation that they're in, and they're looking to reform to get them out of this position, but the guy who leads reform was one of the reasons why the UK has been so stagnant and in such a tough, unstable political situation, because they left the European Union and all the consequences that came with that. And so they're looking to the guy who got them into this situation to get them out of this situation, which would be a very bad thing, I think, if Reform were in fact elected to lead the UK and were given a majority in Parliament. I think that'd be very, very bad. But maybe, the bad thing isn't gonna happen, and maybe Reform are actually starting to show some cracks. And right now, they are embroiled in really their biggest scandal and their biggest sort of their biggest scandal, and they're under the most scrutiny that they've been since the 2024 election because of the behavior of Nigel Farage, their leader, and again the guy who is partially responsible for Britain being in the bad situation that it is right now. What has happened is that the Parliamentary Standards Commission is currently investigating Nigel Farage, because when you're standing to run in an election, you have to declare your finances. You have to declare, where your money's coming from, and if there's conflicts of interest or corruption or whatever that's going on, right? Like, we need to know where your money's coming from, but we don't need to know where all of your money's coming from. Personal gifts don't have to be declared. So, if grandma gives you $100 for Christmas or £100 for Christmas, that's not something you need to declare. But Nigel Farage received a little bit more than $100 or 100 quid from his grandma. He received a £5 million, I keep saying dollars, I'm sorry, a £5 million gift from from a Thai-based but a British cryptocurrency investor named Christopher Harborne. Farage claims that this £5 million was entirely a personal gift that he's free to spend however he likes. But Harborne is one of the biggest donators and supporters of reform. He gave them £12 million in donations in 2025. He's very important to reform's financing, clearly, and he gave Farage £5 million just to himself on top of this. And so Farage is being investigated as to whether or not he should have declared this £5 million donation. On top of that, he's also under investigation for his relationship with George Cottrell, who has provided Farage with housing in London and works for his social media and other things too. He's also a very important person in Farage's orbit. So, the leader of the Reform Party, the leader of this anti-establishment, we're for the people against these out-of-touch establishment parties, their leader is under investigation for having received massive sums of money and help from people in his inner circle, and he might not have properly declared this money, and he's under investigation from the Parliamentary Commission, Standards Commission, about this. If the Standards Commission finds that Farage was in violation of their rules and that he did improperly declare these gifts and this support that he's gotten, what would happen is that he would probably be suspended from Parliament. And if he was suspended from Parliament for longer than 14 days, 2 weeks, a recall petition would be issued. With a recall petition, only if 10% of registered voters in Nigel Farage's constituency of Clacton, if only 10% of people sign this recall petition, Farage will be basically removed from Parliament and a by-election will be held that he can stand in, but that other parties can run into, and so Farage could potentially be voted out of Parliament. And so that's how this could play out if the investigation went against Farage. Farage, I think, knowing that he's probably not going to come out of this investigation looking very good no matter what, decided to try to get ahead of the investigation, and he took the onus on himself to resign from Parliament, saying that instead of having the commission investigate me, basically, I'm going to leave it up to my constituents, and they will be the ones who adjudicate whether or not I've done anything wrong. That was his theory, but things have not gone very well off of that. One is that now that he stepped down, the investigation is paused, but if he got reelected, the investigation could pick right back up where it left off. Meaning that by stepping down and holding his by-election, he hasn't changed his situation at all with regards to this investigation. And it will resume, and he could still be suspended, and a recall petition can still be issued if and when he returns to Parliament. That assumes that he will return to Parliament, which he probably will. But the other thing that I think he wanted to get out of this was to change the narrative, right? You're under investigation, you're under scrutiny. This is the first time that you've really, really been challenged as a leader of reform. And so you want to have a by-election here where you can throw out attacks at your conservative and Labour and Liberal Democrat opponents to put the focus on maybe how bad Labour might be and not on how bad Nigel Farage is. All the other parties in the UK, though, chose not to dignify this stunt. They knew that that's exactly what Nigel Farage wanted to do, and so they are not putting up any candidates in this by-election. Farage is the only candidate from a major British political party running in this by-election that he made happen. So you would think, all right, well, at least he's going to get reelected pretty safely, and this might be a waste of public time and money, but, not that big of a deal. But Britain has a wonderful tradition of parody and joke candidates. And the most recognizable of those right now is this guy named John Harvey, who runs in elections. In 2024, he ran in the same riding as Rishi Sunak, who was at the time leader of the Conservative Party. In 2026, he ran in the Makerfield by-election that Andy Burnham stood in. That's a whole other thing. But he's a bit of an institution in British politics. People know about him. He's in these prominent in these prominent constituencies, and there's very funny photos of Count Binface, which is his character, who's basically this, space alien guy. He's got a garbage bin on his head, and he's wearing this black cloak, so he kind of looks like Darth Vader with a trash can on his head. And so you have these very funny photos of like Sunak or Burnham having to pose with all the candidates that ran in the election, and there's this guy in this massive garbage bin who's standing right next to the leader of the Conservative Party, whatever, in the case of Sunak. And so he's standing in this by-election against Farage because this is what he does, and because there are no other alternatives to Nigel Farage. If you are one of the many, many people in the United Kingdom who don't like Nigel Farage and don't want him in power, Count Binface is your guy. He is the guy that all the non-reform people are coalescing right now to challenge Nigel Farage. Like, they're not gonna, like, he's not gonna win. Count Binface is not gonna win this election. Clacton's a very conservative place. In the 2024 election, Farage won 46% of the vote in Clacton. And so we can assume that if there's no conservatives or Labour candidates or whatever running, that he will probably take some of the votes that would have maybe gone to those parties, and he will get, over 50%, probably pretty comfortably. But clearing 50% when you're the leader of the most popular party in the country is not a big win. If Count Binface can come out of this by-election, and there's not really any polling right now because the election's on August 13th, so it's still a few weeks away, but if Binface can poll like 30%, 35%, and Farage is winning, mid to low 60s, that's not that good of an outcome for him, ultimately. And you can't point at how bad Labour is or how bad the Tories are, because they're not running. They're not your opponents. All the focus is going to remain on you, is going to remain on your finances, and there's this joke candidate running against you who, like, you can't attack him. Like, what can you say about Count Binface that no one knows? Like, you can't say that he's unserious or that he's bad or that he's gonna ruin because he's not a serious politician. He's not a serious candidate. He's just here for a joke, and you're the butt of it, Nigel. And there's a video, a compilation that's on Count Binface's YouTube channel that I'll link to in the description, where, like, so many people in the UK House of Commons right now are, to use a British phrase, taking the absolute piss out of Nigel Farage in this ridiculous situation where the leader of the most popular party in the country is running against, whose big challenge is Darth Vader with a garbage bin on his head. Like, it's just not something that you see every day. The guy who for the last 2 years has had all this momentum behind them and all this hype about how he's gonna be the prime minister and he's gonna change all these things and he's gonna stop the small boats and these immigrants and rah 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 rah. And he's gotta run against a bin. And even if he beats the bin, he gets back in Parliament, reputation damaged because you ran against a freaking bin. The investigation reopens. You probably still get suspended. They probably still sign the recall petition. If Count Binface can get 35% of the vote in Clacton, that means at least 10% of that 35, or not 10%, but you know what I mean. At least 10% of the voters then are really hate Farage and will sign the recall petition to force another by-election, and now he's going to have to run against all the other major parties who have said that they will stand in that election if it happens, and you're going to have to do it all over again, now against the established parties who have real alternatives, and you're just damaged. And again, even if you get out of that, there's so much wind that's been taken out of your sails. And the last thing I'll say is that as all this has happened, I mentioned to make a by-election in a place called Makerfield this year that Binface stood in. That by-election was held so that Andy Burnham, who at the time was the mayor of Manchester, could be elected to Parliament, and he is now the leader of the Labour Party because Keir Starmer resigned because Keir Starmer was very unpopular as Prime Minister. But now you have Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, who is very popular as mayor of Manchester. Now he's in Downing Street. He's about a week in to his time as Prime Minister as I'm recording this. He's getting down to business. He's reorganizing his cabinet. He's trying to sell a new face of the Labour Party to the British voters. And Labour gets to look all serious, all proper. We're reinvented. We have a new face. And Reform is running against Count Binface and is facing a serious challenge from Count Binface. Like, they're gonna have to try a little bit to win this. They can't just count on inertia alone. If Farage still wins this by-election and that there's another by-election in a few months after the investigation completes and he maybe gets suspended again, like, that first by-election, that's £380,000 of British taxpayer money that was wasted on what was at best a vanity stunt that isn't even going to be very vain because your opponent is a bin. And so you can just be attacked on that, on how you can't declare your own money and you're wasting the public's money on these by-elections that mean nothing. Like, it's just a really bad time for Nigel Farage and for the Reform Party right now. And I love it because like I said at the start, I think that these far-right populist parties are destructive and are bad. I think that the last 2 years of this second Trump administration demonstrates just how bad these people actually are at governing, at leading countries, at making important decisions. And I love to see them get humiliated because I hate this brand of politics that has arisen as I've come of age, right? Like, I'm 23 years old. Donald Trump burst onto the scene when I was 12, 13 years old. This is so much of what politics has been, and I hate it. And I love that Farage is getting humiliated, that Marie Le Pen was in court, even though she still gets to run in the French election, that Trump is doing horribly. Like, I love to see these people fail, man. And if it goes bad for Farage with this by-election and everything that comes from it, if Labour can do really well with Andy Burnham, maybe that takes some of the wind out of the sails of the other far-right parties in Europe as well. It probably won't affect America. They still are going to do what they're going to do, and Trump might go poorly in the midterms, and we'll see what happens in 2028. But the point is that just 2 years ago, when Trump returned to office, these people, all of them, Farage, Le Pen, AFD, they all looked kind of unstoppable and inevitable. And in a relatively short amount of time, like not even a full 2 years, they've lost a lot of momentum because now they're actually under scrutiny and they actually have to sort of be revealed as being corrupt, as being dishonest, and as jokes. Farage is a joke, and he deserves to run against Count Binface because that's the only thing that should be dignifying Nigel Farage right now. He's beneath Labour, he's beneath the Tories. Go run against this bin. even if you beat the bin, you still now have to answer for the fact that you did all this and ran against a bin. So that's all. Maybe I'll make some more politicky type videos like this in the future. This was just too good to not talk about, man. It's hilarious. And Nigel, I wish you the worst. And if anyone from Clacton is watching this video right now and you made it to the end, I would implore you to put your vote in the bin.